Aye, aye. I wanted to talk today about Eddie Jones and an experience he had after the England-Scotland rugby match, because he was travelling on the train from Edinburgh to Manchester the day after England played Scotland at the rugby and Scotland won rather handsomely. He was travelling down the train, and apparently on the train and afterwards he was approached by some Scottish people on the train. I'm not saying they're Scottish rugby fans, because that's not been determined, but they'd give him some hassle, give him some shit banter, called him a cunt. Not just total yobs, really. So there's been a couple of hot takes on this, one of which is by Jonathan Brocklebank, who writes for the Scottish Daily Mail. So some yobs in a train, give Eddie Jones some hassle. What's his take on the whole matter? It goes as follows. If England's rugby coach can't travel in peace in our country, we should be ashamed to belong to it. My column in today's Scottish Daily Mail. And here's the thing, here's how you know that this article by Jonathan Brocklebank is shit stirring. Because you can tell a shit stirrer from a mile away. We should be ashamed to belong to it. That's the sort of thing that always pisses people off. Telling people how to feel, especially telling people to feel bad. You should be ashamed. You need to be ashamed. That's a surefire way to fuck people off. But of course, Jonathan Brocklebank doesn't actually mean that we should feel ashamed. What he actually means is that somebody else should feel ashamed. Now, who do you think it is that Jonathan Brocklebank thinks should be ashamed? Well, let's try and get to the bottom of that. So here's the article. Oh, and of course, it's now not only is it we need to feel ashamed, but it's an attack on our national anthem as well, because Jonathan Brocklebank has a problem with the national anthem as well. It's that sending them homeward. Oh, that's not very sporting, tally-ho. So, at the conclusion of one of the most satisfying rugby matches I have ever watched, so one of these, he's one of these sort of 18-minute nationalists, isn't he? So, at the conclusion of one of the most satisfying rugby matches I have ever watched, the England coach Eddie Jones was asked for his thoughts on Scotland's victory. Jones was magnanimity personified. That's a difficult word to get out. Scotland, he said, were the better team and deserved their convincing win. Now, this is the start of the sainthood of Eddie Jones. Saint Eddie, because Eddie Jones never winds up the opposition. He's such a good guy, is Eddie Jones, and everybody knows, who knows anything about rugby, knows that Eddie Jones likes to fucking wind people up, which is why Gavin Hastings, in the run-up to the match, had said, it's about rubbing his nose in it sometimes. But we'll come back to that. So he complimented on Gregor Townsend and his men winning the Calcutta Cup. And in victory, depressing members of Scots were a disgrace to it. So feel shitty, Scottish people. Feel shitty, because Jonathan Brocklebank's here to tell us what's wrong with you. Some may consider it naive of the England coach to imagine that the day after such a fixture, he could get in a train at Edinburgh Waverley with a standard class ticket and enjoy a peaceful journey to Manchester to watch a football match at Old Trafford as the guest of Sir Alex Ferguson. Well, it's maybe slightly naive, but it doesn't mean that he shouldn't have been able to do that. He should have been able to go down in peace, but that's obviously not what's happened. So they may conclude that, as an Australian, Jones just doesn't get it, that this is Scotland v England we are talking about, that this goes back hundreds of years to unfinished business on battlefields beyond Antipodeans ken. Fucking hell, a lot of difficult words. I'm drinking coffee, by the way, not lager or whiskey or anything. I'm struggling to get my words out today. But Jones gets it fine. It is the mob in his midst who don't. So, fair enough. These guys were idiots. They weren't the brightest lot of people that came up and called him a baldy cunt. And they were pushed as fuck as well. So we can't expect them to be great intellectuals. And it wasn't okay, but fair is fair, so we can all condemn that, can't we? That it was not okay for this dignified man to travel on a train in my country makes me ashamed to belong to it. Jonathan, your shame is your own shame. If you want to feel ashamed to be Scottish, well, that's up to you. But I'm going to remember the fact that you said you were ashamed to belong to Scotland, because I'm sure when Indy Ref 2 comes along, you'll be stating just how proudly Scottish you are. I'm a proud Scot. I'm a proud Scot. I bet you'll be nothing but fucking repeating that kind of shit all the time. But I'm going to remind you that you're ashamed to belong to this country just because of some drunken yobs on a train. Fucking idiot. So they launched a torrent of abuse at him. One called him a baldy fucking cunt. So at least it was accurate. I'm not saying he's a cunt, but he's definitely baldy. Then they all did. Woo, boo! As he dived into a car, they surrounded it, banging it and barracking him. And one thug who tried to get in the car with him had to be manhandled away. Okay, so all this, we can all agree that wasn't good. But here's where we get to the crux of the article. So far, so banal. I mean, he's saying we should all be ashamed, even although I don't understand why. You know, blame a nation for a couple of drunken yobs. But one reason is that people who should have known better behave foolishly. Scotland 25, them 13 was a lamentable tweet at full time by Angus MacNeil MP. It was designed to promote the us and them mentality among SNP supporters. Oh, so it's the SNP's fault. Some drunken yobs on a train harassed the England manager the day after the Scotland v England game, and it's the SNP's fault. We should have known. This is why you're so ashamed to be Scottish, Jonathan. It's because of the SNP, isn't it? Those disgusting SNP scum. But remember, it was Gavin Hastings who spoke about rubbing Eddie Jones's nose in it. Gavin Hastings. Gavin Hastings is a well-known Unionist. So maybe it's the Unionists. Maybe it's the Unionists that have got the problem. Maybe because Unionists don't have Scottish independence and don't have that kind of nationalism to think about, they've got to try and prove how proudly Scottish they are in other ways. Perhaps all those people that were yobs on the train, they were all Unionists just trying to show just how proudly Scottish they were. I don't know that, but I can make up bullshit just as easily as you, Jonathan, so why should my bullshit be any lesser than yours? Does it occur to them that many of them live in Scottish households? Blah-de, blah-de, blah. Something about battlefields and all forgotten, all this kind of crap. And then we come to, this may be a question to consider the next time we puff our chests like pigeons and bellow words to Flower of Scotland, that unofficial national anthem. I don't know why he's got to, you know, chip in the unofficialness of it. I don't understand what he's on about there. If we seek a grown-up attitude to our sporting endeavours, it may be that prefacing our efforts in the field of play with a folk song about the time in 1314 when the Scots taught the English a lesson at Bannockburn is not the place to start. Perhaps this is the wrong message for stadiums full of Scots to be putting out. What message do you want? What you message? Here's a song for you, Jonathan Brocklebank. Thank my Unionist masters who pat my head for being a good Uncle Tom Scotsman. There's a song for you. That would be the song that you would want, isn't it? But the real thing is that this is just an example of a giant shit-stirring message from you, trying to wind people up. But it's not going to work because you're a fucking arsehole. There you go. People can see directly through your shit stirring here. And if you want to feel ashamed to be Scottish, good for you. You feel ashamed to be Scottish. But when the Indy Ref 2 comes around, let's remember that Jonathan Brocklebank, reporter with the Scottish Daily Mail, is ashamed to be Scottish, not a proud Scotsman, as I'm sure he'll be claiming when Referendum 2 comes around. So that's all I'm going to say about that, and I'll leave you with it. Cheerio.